Live from Liverpool, The Dark Paranormal, Season 21.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Dark Paranormal Season 21, Episode 2. Now firstly, a massive thank you as ever for all of your feedback regarding our very first episode, and for all your feedback already on our first minisode. Now I record this, The Dark Paranormal, on a Wednesday for our Patreons, but it releases to the general public on a Friday. The minisode is released to our Patreons on a Monday, and to the general public on a Wednesday, as you well know. And in the 9 hours since it's been up, we've received 20 emails saying how terrifying they found that minisode, and also many emails from both Patreons and non-Patreons advising me not to get that chair. Now, although when I said it, it was 60% tongue-in-cheek, there was part of me that was really interested in trying to get hold of that chair. But I'm kind of convinced things happen for a reason, and when many of your listeners get in touch to say, don't get the chair, I pay heed to those sort of warnings. That said, it's now 90% no. There's still part of me which is kind of like, well, if you want evidence of this, this is the sort of item you should be investigating. But anyway, thank you for all of your feedback, correspondence. It's what makes the show what it is. Now don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience that you wish to share either with the Dark Paranormal or something shorter that can go for a minisode or on Dark Bites, you can go to our website, thedarkparanormal.com, and click on Submit My Experience, or simply click the link in the show notes. In those show notes, of course, you'll find a link to Patreon, which is still offering a free week trial of our highest tier, so head over to patreon.com/The Dark Paranormal and try out for free what I keep talking about each and every week at the start of the show, which is that sense of community, the wonderful spirit that exists within our Patreon team, both of which genuinely would be the reasons I would join our Patreon if I was an outsider and not the host, but also the main point of being a Patreon member is you receive everything from this main feed both early and ad-free, and you can also gain access to our back catalogue of Dark Bites, where we have a 30-minute show every week of the year, all about those shorter experiences which didn't quite make up a full episode, and we're now averaging about 140 hours worth of back content for you to listen to at your leisure. So either click the link in the show note or head over to patreon.com/The Dark Paranormal. We'd really, really love you to go and try it out, and I think a lot of you, when you do try it out, will stay. I know I would, and I know the following people have. So a big welcome to our newest team members over at Patreon, who are Alexandra Hayes-Reynolds, Howard Grimshaw, Rachel Laheath, Meredith, Jenny, Emily, Colby Cheese, Beck Stone, William Davies, Amy Leather, Lacinia, Audrey House, Ellie, Martina Hernandez, Her, Jasmine3916, Mary Phillips, Hayley, One Community, Saffron, Ian Place, Calmed at Last, Bobby, ForMe123, Emma T, Rest and Realization, and Carla. A huge thank you to all of our newest Patreon team members, and of course to all of our existing team members too. If you'd like to join our wonderful team over there, where there genuinely is a unique feeling of support, belief, mixed with healthy skepticism, then that's the place for you. Head over to patreon.com/The Dark Paranormal. Now, before I introduce today's episode, just a quick thing to say, I normally release a trailer for a season before the season airs. This time round, I forgot to do it. So I've launched a It Is Out Now sort of trailer, which is available on Instagram at The Dark Paranormal and also on TikTok at The Dark Paranormal. A lot of people are asking what is being chanted or said repeatedly throughout the video. Now, I'll wait until somebody emails in with the correct answer. And it's not as dark as you think, it just sounds it. But right now, I'd like you to lower the lights, make yourself comfortable, and of course, leave your disbelief at the door, as we hear all about Katy's room. Hello, Kevin. I wanted to start by thanking you for all the time and effort you put into this podcast and its production. As so many have said before me, what you've created with this podcast is wonderful, and so is the community that has sprung from it. I wish to stay anonymous for my experience, and I will be changing the name and locations for the sake of privacy of other people. I'll say that, like many other experiences before me, the events that happened in this story still stick with me today. It's been about 4 years since I moved out of the house where my experience occurred, and thankfully, I haven't experienced anything else since. My experience started in the summer of 2020. This was the height of COVID-19. My roommate, Katy, and I were desperately searching for a new place to rent for the start of my senior year of college, after our previous living arrangement had fell through. After about 3 months of searching with no luck, we came across a townhouse in a secluded neighbourhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. I was away at the time visiting my boyfriend, so Katy, my roommate, did the house tour with her parents, and they called me to say it was perfect. Looking back now, I wonder if I would have felt the presence of whatever it was had I been there to tour it before we signed onto the lease. The townhouse was a bit out of our budget, but both of our parents agreed as, again, COVID was at its height, making it impossible to find anything. Plus, fire season had started in our state, so we desperately needed a place to move into. My parents couldn't make the drive to help me move, so Katy's parents drove up to help the two of us. To give a very brief layout, when you entered through the front door, you were greeted by a small platform with split-level stairs. To the right, stairs lead down to the lower level, where the garage, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom were located. To the left, the stairs would take you up to the main level, which included the kitchen, living room, a spare bathroom, and a master bedroom with its own attached bathroom. The house was a townhouse, meaning it had houses either side. The people to our left, they owned the house as a vacation home, and only rarely came for 1 month of the year. To our right were an elderly couple that were both very quiet and travelled a lot in their camper van. As Katy's family had helped so much with the move, I told her to take the master bedroom upstairs, and I took one of the bedrooms downstairs at the end of the hallway. The first day we moved in, we were both so excited to have our own place, as our last place was very toxic. We shared with roommates who had many issues. I remember saying to Katy that it felt so good to have the house. We really felt like this was a fresh start. And after her dad dropped off the last of our things, I began setting up my room and Katy left for work. After a long morning unpacking, etc., I took a nap. I closed my bedroom door, lowered my blinds, and I went to sleep. I was woken by the sound of my bedroom door opening, and I could see the hallway light from my bed. I realized at that moment that I wasn't able to move my legs. Now, I'd had sleep paralysis a few times in the past, so I knew what this felt like, but I'd never had it after a nap. It felt more like the lower half of my body hadn't gotten the message that my mind was up. I was able to move my head and my eyes, and as I glanced over, still preoccupied with the fact my legs weren't moving, I watched someone walk in, with their hands curled up, pulled tightly to their chest, tiptoeing slowly into my room. Katy always did weird stuff like this. She'd often woken me up from naps. So I said, "Hey, can you help pull my blankets off, please?" I sleep with 2 comforters, so I figured maybe the weight of them was making it difficult for my mind to wake me fully. I was looking down at my blankets when I felt Katy grab the corner of the blankets up by my neck and peel them back. As soon as the blankets were off my legs, they were able to move, and I turned my head realizing Katy hadn't yet spoken a word to me since walking in. I looked at her outline, and in this dark room I said, "Katy, is that you?" There was no response. Then not Katy brought her finger to her mouth and whispered, "Shh." I couldn't make out a face, only a shadow and long hair, but I was paralyzed now in fear. Then not Katy slowly got down on all fours and crawled backwards out of my bedroom and down the hallway. I had that feeling, the one where you feel instantly sick, deep in the pit of your stomach. That feeling where you can't believe what you've just seen. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears as I tried to rationalize all this. I ended up convincing myself it had to be Katy. I sat up, looking down at my comforter that was now perfectly peeled off my legs. I got up and ran through my open bedroom door, the door I had closed before my nap, so it must be Katy. I shot up those stairs, angry that Katy would do something like this. I reached her bedroom and yelled, "Katy, what the heck are you?" But the bedroom was empty. I checked everywhere, and I realized she wasn't in the house. I pulled out my phone. I checked her location, and she was over 30 minutes away at her job. I texted her to check, still thinking it was possibly somehow her. And she texts back, saying she was at work and asking, "Is everything okay?" My stomach dropped, and I had this uneasy feeling for the rest of the day as I waited for her to return home. When she did, I immediately started telling her what happened, and she stopped me, telling me we've just moved in, saying she didn't want to be scared here after just finding the perfect house. I agreed, albeit reluctantly, and that was the end of the conversation. As time went on, things only got weirder. Katy struggled a bit in school, so we'd spend lots of time together doing homework, as she was studying the same thing as me, but just a few years behind. As I said, this was during COVID, and it became clear that our views about COVID didn't match. She didn't seem to share the same worries I had. I was in the immune-compromised group, so I was very worried about getting sick, and I'd shared those worries with her. Unfortunately, we couldn't come to an agreement on the quarantine situation, which meant she would often go to other people's houses, or go and visit her family for long weekends. School at this time, of course, was entirely online. This put a strain on our friendship. I didn't want to have parties at our house, or go out to bars, when I was at such a high risk of both contracting and suffering from COVID. Because of this, as the months progressed, she was gone more and more. Therefore, I was left alone in a very big house, in a private cul-de-sac, in an empty, still home. I'd lived in places before where I'd felt spirits or other presences, and we kind of coexisted together. So I wouldn't describe myself as someone who spooked easily at that time. Except for that first day, there didn't seem to be any outright strange things going on in the home. Until my roommate would leave, and I'd be upstairs alone. I'd be cleaning dishes and I'd look up, just in time to see something slink around the corner. Or I'd have my back turned whilst cooking on the stove, and something would come up and press itself against me. I'd spin around and find nothing. I felt there was a presence that seemed to stay in the corner of the dining room. At times, the back of my neck felt as if someone had just leaned in and breathed on my bare skin. I tried to chalk it up to me being alone in a big house and being overly nervous. But then I started to feel or notice that the presence that resided in the corner of the dining room had backed off into Katy's room. The upstairs was open concept, so from the living room you could sit on the couch and see the dining room, the door to the powder room. And if you stood up, you could see just around the corner to Katy's room. When I'd watch TV, my eyes would be drawn to the corner, still feeling like someone or something was watching me. One night I was downstairs in my bedroom, home alone, and I hear someone walking back and forth in the room above me, Katy's room. Suddenly, I hear someone running through the dining room, down the stairs, and I knew someone or something was coming right for me. I ran across my room and slammed my door shut. I could feel my heart beating out of my chest and got that sick feeling again. And then I heard someone standing outside my bedroom door. I remained silent, but the carpet squeaking under their feet as they shifted their weight back and forth was audible from outside my door. I very slowly got down on my knees and tried to peek under the door, but I saw nothing. But I could still hear and feel that presence outside. That was the start of something more. Today's episode of The Dark Paranormal is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it. So your dollar goes a long way. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Companies and affiliates' potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations. The weeks passed, and every night Katy was gone, I would hear someone pacing back and forth in Katy's room. Next, I began to hear scratching on the wall, just where my headboard was, like fingernails scraping down my wall. And then, those same steps from her room, running down the stairs through the hallway and standing outside my bedroom door. I'd silently await the telltale sound of the carpet squeaking under someone or something's weight. One night I had a vivid, terrifying dream. Someone was living in the walls of the house. In this dream, a man came out of the opening in the attic that was right above Katy's room. He jumped down and attacked me, and I woke up sweating and shaking, again alone in the house. At one point, Katy came back after having been gone a few weeks, and I tried again to talk to her about what was going on. I felt like maybe someone was living in the walls, which is entirely possible in the US, or at least getting into the house. I thought of every other thing than ghosts. Finally, after coaxing it out of her, Katy admitted that a few months before, she'd come home one day from work and yelled down into my room, "Hi, I'm home," and heard me reply from my bedroom clear as day. She went upstairs to put her work things away and then came downstairs to say hello. But my room was empty. She then checked my location, and I was at university at the time. She then admitted that she felt there was a presence in the house, but still didn't want to discuss it any further, because it freaked her out, and again, she liked living there. As a quick trigger warning, the next part mentions eating disorders. When Katy was in that house, I saw her progressively decline. She stopped caring about school, became depressed, was gone for hours doing who knows what, and she began starving herself to the point I had to step in and eat meals with her, or make her food, hoping she would eat something. The girl I knew before moving into this house, like any of us, had her struggles, but she was outgoing and fun. I got the feeling that there was something in this house, more specifically, her room, that was draining her. Again, this was during COVID, and many of us suffered from depression or anxiety or both due to the situation. But this was different. Soon, her hair was falling out. She seemed more on edge and was very easily provoked. Eventually, Katy dropped out of school altogether and told me she was going home for a bit to figure some things out. She said she'd be back in a few weeks to talk through things with me. Things were incredibly strained between us by then. One afternoon, 2 of my friends came over to hang out. One of them I'd recently become acquainted with, Sadie, and the other was my best friend, Lisa. I sat on the couch with my back to the dining room, and they sat together on the couch across from me as we chatted about our lives and so forth. During our time together, I kept noticing Sadie was looking over my shoulder whilst we were talking. I finally looked behind me, and I saw she was staring into the corner of the dining room. We weren't super close yet, so I didn't want to be rude, but eventually it was bothering me, so I asked, "Can I ask, what are you looking at?" She brushed me off, saying it was nothing, until I insisted. And she told me that she had a weird feeling about that area of the house. At this point, Lisa knew that I felt like something weird was in the house, but she's a die-hard non-believer, so I hadn't taken the time to tell her about how I'd felt something from that specific area of the house. I asked Sadie what she meant, and she said she always has this sixth sense sort of thing, and she felt there was a spirit of some sort in the corner, and it didn't feel friendly. Well, I immediately tensed up, and she immediately noticed and started quickly backtracking, saying I could be wrong, and went on to tell a light-hearted story about how she saw the relative of her husband who'd passed away, basically changing the tone of the conversation. But as Sadie was telling the story, the 3 of us heard a female giggle from the hallway downstairs. We paused and looked at each other in disbelief. Sadie said it was best to not acknowledge it, so we tried our best to move on and continued chatting. When it was time for them to go, I said my goodbyes, and I distinctly remember saying to Lisa something along the lines of, "You're so lucky you get to go home. I have to stay here with this thing in the house." She made a joke trying to lighten the mood, and off they went on their way, leaving me alone in that house. But I felt seen. Other people had noticed the presence in the house. The second time Sadie and Lisa came over together, Sadie was sat where I'd sat the last time, with her back to the corner of the dining room. I could tell something was wrong pretty quickly, so I asked, but she shrugged me off, saying she was okay. But she was very reserved. I later found out that as Sadie and Lisa drove home together, Sadie turned to Lisa and said, "There is something dark in that house, and I never want to go back there." And she never did. During this time, my parents knew about what was happening, but my father is a non-believer. My mother, on the other hand, isn't. They didn't want to feed into my fear, so they both tried to brush off a lot of what was happening. But when my mum first came to visit the house, she walked in and said, "Oh yeah, this place does have a weird feeling about it." I was stunned, but also glad. Again, I wasn't the only one noticing the energy in the house. When you live in a situation like this, it's easy to feel that you're going insane, to doubt yourself. So when other people admit to feeling something or noticing something, it's a real relief, as well as frightening. A few weeks later, Lisa decided to stay over one night, still a non-believer, and thinking more that someone maybe was coming into the house. She slept in my bedroom on an air mattress next to my bed. I fell asleep pretty quickly, but as she explained the next morning, she had a night of restless sleep as she was listening to someone walking back and forth in the bedroom above. In addition, she could also hear people whispering from the same room. The worst part is that the vent between Katy's room and mine is connected through the ceiling. That day, she said to me she had no idea how I was living in that house, and said even as a non-believer, there was definitely something strange going on. After that, I tried to do some research on the house itself, but there was nothing really. It wasn't even a very old house. Early March 2021, I was downstairs in my online class when I hear someone run down my stairs, but this time it sounded different from the other times. This was a grown man running. I ran across my room to the door, slamming it shut and locking it. I text my friend Lisa asking what to do. This was the first time I called the police. Lisa arrived before the police, and as we investigated the house, we noticed a weird smell in one of the closets. A closet that led to a crawl space, like a sweaty, unwashed man. The police checked everything and found nothing, only suggesting that maybe someone came to look in the crawl space. I stayed over at Lisa's place that night. As we were leaving, we both looked at Katy's room, checking that the door was closed, still thinking someone had been in the house. The next day I came back, Lisa in tow, and we looked up as we opened the door to see Katy's door wide open. That week, my landlord came out and checked under the house, and nothing was there that would suggest anyone had been there, or even that animals were living under the house. A few weeks later, I come home from work in a happy mood, and I run upstairs to make myself a snack. As I begin walking down the stairs to my bedroom, I noticed the door to the garage was open. I stared at that gaping black crack between the door and the frame, and again that feeling that something wasn't right sat heavy in my stomach. I ran into my room and I called Lisa. At this point, I was thinking this proved my theory someone else is living in the house, either in the walls, the attic, or the crawl space. Lisa rushes over to my house and I run to the door. I open it quickly and she runs to the kitchen, grabs a big knife, and we both go into the garage. Next, we search the entire house, looking everywhere to make sure no one is in the house. That night, we decided it was best for me to sleep over at her house, so I packed a bag and left. After this incident, I went and bought door alarms. These were the types that had two magnets that would make a ding-dong sound when the magnets separated completely, alerting me that someone had come into the house. I placed one on the front door and one on the door to the garage. By this point, I was not spending any time upstairs anymore. I was alone and I was living in fear. I would make my dinner early and bring it downstairs. Eventually, I had all my food and water downstairs and a rice cooker. Before it was dark outside, I would go to the restroom for the last time that night before going to my room, locking the door and putting down a door jamb for extra protection, because I still thought it was a possibility someone was somehow in the house. I am truly an extremely hygienic person, and I have issues with germs, but I want to help you to understand the absolute fear I was living in every day in that house. Things got so bad that I could not leave my bedroom at night, so I had to buy a portable camping toilet to keep in my room in case I needed to go and pee in the night. I know that sounds so disgusting, but I was being terrorized by whatever was living in that house, and until you know the feeling of running across the hallway into your bathroom, closing the door just as you hear something run down the hallway and the carpet squeaking outside as whatever stands outside your room, then you can judge me. Like I said, I could no longer leave my room past dark, and if I dared to open my door a crack and look down the hallway, I'd be staring into the darkness, and I'd feel something standing at the bottom of the stairs, watching me and waiting for me to come from my bedroom. Along with the door alarms, I also went to a spiritual shop and bought protection crystals and locally sourced sage from a tribe in the area, and I tried to keep my room protected, so to speak. I also wore a protection necklace as well, terrified of what I was living with, but still trying to convince myself there had to be a logical explanation. One night in May 2021, I was in my room with the door closed and locked, and I froze in place, knowing the only way that alarm goes off is if someone's opened the front door and separated the magnets. I texted my friend Lisa. She urged me to call the police, but at this point, I still didn't want to be that girl that calls the police for trivial things. But I also knew there was no other way this alarm could have gone off. My room was on a hill, so my bedroom was 2 feet off the ground. I removed the screen, crawled out the back window, and ran to my car, locking it quickly behind me. I called the non-emergency line, explaining what had happened, and asked if they could send someone over when they had the time. I gave the cops the key, they went in, searched the whole house, and found nothing. They suggested that someone may have the key, and to call my landlord to get the locks changed, and also to get some security cameras as well. The very next day, I bought a security camera and set it up facing the door to see if I could catch anyone that was coming in. After a week, the landlord changed the locks. I told my roommate about what happened in case she decided to come back. I know many people on this podcast have explained feelings of anger towards whatever was in their home, and that is exactly how I felt. Because I couldn't even enjoy the space of my own home as I lived a life where I had to lock myself in my room each night once the darkness came. I went away for a few days to visit my family, and I came home again to an empty house. But my roommate and her cousins were in town, and when I walked into her room, I found a Ouija board on the ground. I felt immediately ill, and I was upset. Because the last thing I needed was more issues in this house, especially from people who didn't know how to use a Ouija board properly. It frustrated me even more because I'd asked my roommate numerous times how she felt about the house, and she was so reluctant to share anything with me. Then she comes home for a few days, unannounced, and proceeds to do the last thing she should, when I've told her I felt there's something in the home. At this point, it's now summertime, and the days are longer, so I try to take back my space, forcing myself to spend more time upstairs while it was light. A few times I fell asleep on the couch upstairs, only to wake up with that feeling that someone had been stood over me whilst I was sleeping. And many times I had to call my friends or even my boss to have her husband come and check out the house, to make sure no one was in the house with me and that everything was secure. I began sleeping over at Lisa's house more often, and I avoided that house as much as possible. Shortly after, Katy came and packed up her stuff and moved out. At this point, we really weren't on good terms, and there was a sense of relief that she was leaving, but also a feeling of dread that now I was truly alone in this house. Lisa came over, and we went into Katy's room to make sure everything had been collected. And as her room was much bigger than mine, with a bathroom attached, naturally the thought came to me that I should move upstairs. But as we walked into the bedroom, Lisa and I immediately knew that wouldn't be happening. The vibe in that room was just off. The feeling was empty, uncomfortable. And I knew that whatever was in the house was in that room. Just after Katy moved out, Lisa moved about an hour away for a new job and would often stay at my place on the weekends. I went home for a week to visit my family, and she arrived at my house before me. I was on my way back in the last hour of a 4-hour drive, and Lisa called me, asking where I was. I said I still had about an hour to go and that I'd be home shortly. She then went silent. I asked why, and she said she would tell me when I got home. So when I arrived, Lisa told me she'd been taking a shower and heard the sound of someone coming into the house. And it sounded like all the kitchen cabinets were being opened and someone was walking around unpacking things. When she got out of the shower, she ran upstairs to say hi to me, and I'm not there. I stayed in the house for 2 more weeks or so after this, and then my dad came to help me pack up and leave. I remember the feeling when I drove away from that house was just pure relief. I'm not sure what was living there with me, how many spirits there were, but the feeling I had was a man and a young girl. The girl was more of a trickster spirit, but the male presence was different. He fed off the fear and negative emotions that were in that house. It's been a little over 4 years since I lived in that house, and still, to this day, I have nightmares about what happened there. It's one of those situations that was a slow psychological torture. I tried everything to rationalize what was happening, but as hard as I tried to ignore it, it only got worse. And I'm still not sure what scares me most. The idea of someone living in the walls, or the idea of something living there with me. Anonymous. Well, thank you so much, Anonymous, for your wonderful experience for episode 2. Now, why I love this experience is it's very reminiscent of what we get on Dark Bites. And it's very rare to find it in a long-form experience. And that is something which asks more questions than it answers. For me, a huge component that's missing from this story, which is no fault of your own, is Katy. It's who she is, it's what she's into. I don't think it's coincidental there's a Ouija board found on her bedroom floor. But you guys let me know what you think. But for now, we're going to call an end to episode 2. Thank you, Anonymous. And to everyone out there, thank you for listening. I can't wait to speak to you again next week for episode 3. This is one I've been looking forward to quite a bit. And until then, remember, when you're discussing the paranormal, always try to leave some of your disbelief at the door. And I'll see you next time, right here on The Dark Paranormal.